Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Prove with force. Of course, this is Su Mu's own name. In terms of the game world style of painting, it is obvious that the name Flesh God is more suitable for this perfect way of becoming a god. Sitting on his own throne, Su Mu was a little confused. To prove the Tao with strength, the pursuit is the four-dimensional attribute of the limit. No priesthood. There are no rules. There is no world, not even divine. This perfect path to becoming a god only pursues the power of the four-dimensional attributes. It is only the power of oneself. All kinds of mighty forces are integrated into one, and there is no false appearance. This is the path to becoming a god. As long as the single occupancy reaches 1 million points, you can become a god in this way. Not to mention, Su Mu's 4D attributes have already reached 1 million points. That is to say, as long as Su Mu wants to. There is no need to complete the last 2 points of divinity. No need to determine your future priesthood. You don't even need to continue to develop the abyss world. At this time, now, he can be conferred a god on the spot. Embark on a path of becoming a god that is completely different from the Dimension Demon God and the true 687 God. Only, there is a problem. Strictly speaking, the road to becoming a god by proving the Tao with strength and consecrating a god in the flesh did not exist before. It was Su Mu's achievement of reaching the limit of four-dimensional attributes, and this road to becoming a god was born. How to become a god, he already knew. 1. After becoming a god, how to continue to grow and how to further improve his strength needs to be explored by himself. He needs to develop himself, and he needs to create a new evolutionary system from scratch. This process, not to mention whether Su Mu can do it or not. Even if he can do it, I'm afraid I don't know if it will be tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years later. This is unacceptable to Su Mu, who pursues the achievement of the realm of the God King and the Demon King in the shortest time, and the achievement of the strongest boss in history. Prove the Tao with strength, and the combat power is unparalleled. The realm of the next god to blow up the next god, and even the middle god is as simple as eating and drinking. But, facing the upper gods? Facing the King of God? From this point of view, proving the Tao with strength and conferring gods on the ground will not only not improve his growth rate, but will greatly slow down his growth rate. With such concerns, he is naturally unwilling to confer a god on the spot. Devil of the Abyss. Believe in God. Fleshly conferred a god. 3 different evolutionary routes flashed through my mind. Su Mu is also thinking about his future path. The road of the Abyss Demon God. With the level of the Abyss world rising several times, it has already reached a very high level, and it would undoubtedly be extremely stupid to discard it. Moreover, all his family assets are in the Abyss world. The road of believing in the true God. Also, with the improvement of the level, there are already countless intelligent creatures in the Abyss world. The existence of these intelligent creatures enables Su Mu to continue to gain a lot of faith power even if he shrinks from now on, and constantly improves his own strength and realm. The road to consecrate the gods of the flesh, there is no way ahead, and you need to open up yourself. Unparalleled in combat power, he can easily destroy the existence of the same realm or even higher realm. This evolutionary path also has unparalleled appeal. Besides, this evolutionary path has been pioneered by itself. Perhaps, the spiritual attribute of 1 million points makes Su Mu's thinking ability reach the limit. In just a few minutes, he has a new plan for his future growth route, based on the Abyss world, by the power of faith as a means, with the perfect body as the body. Trinity, 3 paths to becoming gods are integrated. Perhaps, for me, this is the best way to grow with both strength and speed. With a conclusion in mind, Su Mu no longer struggled. Smile. With powerful spiritual power, he forcibly adapted to his perfect divine body after countless surges and intensifications. With a thought, he relied on the connection between himself and the Abyss Lords to send out messages one by one. Soon, an Abyss Lord exuding a powerful breath appeared in the Abyss Hall, and appeared in front of Su-mu. "See my lord." After the salute, these Abyss Lords sat on the stone chairs on both sides of the Abyss Hall. Sarendu and Olivia, who have achieved the throne of the true god, are sitting on the left, and the remaining Abyss Lords are sitting on the right. "Sit in your place." Looking at Su-mu on the throne in the deepest part of the hall, Sarine was deeply moved. So far, Sarine is still the most powerful Abyss Lord in the Abyss world. Whether it is the 800,000 point limit of four-dimensional attribute conferred God, or the godhead condensed by the two major priesthoods of darkness and undead, he has far surpassed other true gods, and also surpassed Olivia by a large margin. At this time, Sarendu's heart was quite shocked. The other Abyss Lords were limited by their strength and did not find anything unusual about their lords. Sarendu vaguely felt something. Realm, pinnacle demigod. This, not only him, but also Olivia and other Abyss Lords can feel it. However, under the aura of the peak demigod, Sarine faintly felt that a power that was no less than himself, or even far surpassed himself, was hidden in the body of the Lord. This kind of power is not the power of the dimensional demon god, nor the power of believing in the true God. It seems to be some kind of power that is no less than the level of the true God. Ultimate God? Perfect body? Sarah's heart trembled. Only the perfect divine body brought by the ultimate conferred God can explain this kind of terrifying power that neither belongs to the dimension demon nor the true God. How long has it been since the Lord came into contact with the concept of ultimate conferring gods? It's less than a year in full. It's just that he completed in less than a year and surpassed his tens of thousands of years of hard work, reaching another limit? For a time, Sarendu's heart was full of shock and deep disbelief at the Lord. Summoning the Abyss Lords under his command, Su-mu naturally did not want to show off his perfect body. He wants to coordinate the current strength of the Abyss world. Subsequently, when the Abyss Lords finished their reports, Su-mu also had a clear understanding of the power that the Abyss world now possesses. First, in terms of combat power. True god-level combat power, 3 people. Su-mu, the pinnacle demigod. In the Abyss world, it is enough to exert the strength of the upper gods, that is, outside the Abyss world. Now he also has the combat power of the upper gods. Sarendu, the lower god. However, under the blessing of darkness and undead, he achieved the divine position in the form of ultimate consecration without lacking the power of faith, which is enough to exert the peak combat power of the lower gods. Olivia, the lower god. With the 3 priesthoods of bad luck, greed, and raven, even if Olivia is far from being comparable to Su-mu and Sarahin, compared to those lower gods who have only 1 priesthood, is to exceed a lot. It is a normal low-ranking god's combat power. Demigod-level combat power, 17 people. Agnes, a Death Knight, a high-ranking demigod. Augustine, a Baron Knight, a high-ranking demigod. Nefarian, the Abyss Dragon, the median demigod. Rhoda Monroe, the King of Tombs, the median demigod. Abinia, the Queen of Banshees, the median demigod. Alex, the Town of Nightmares, the median demigod. Corolla, the Queen of Ghosts, the median demigod. Mist, Corpse Sword Saint, median demigod. Emily, the Abyss Spider, the median demigod. Argus, the Lich King, a lower demigod. The King of Dwarves, the lower demigod. The Goblin King, the lower demigod. With enough divinity and enough experience points, the best qualified Agnes and Augustine's Realm 5.5 have soared to the level of the upper demigods. Even the other Abyss Lords are mostly middle demigods and lower demigods. In addition, it is worth mentioning that the gluttonous Insect King has also reached the demigod realm and is a median demigod. However, even if he has reached the level of a median demigod, the mind of the gluttonous Insect King is still simple. This Insect King, who only represents one of the 7 deadly sins, gluttony, has always been between Su-mu's subordinates and tools, and cannot become a separate Abyss Lord. Plus the gluttonous Insect King. The Abyss camp already has 18 demigod-level combat power. Compared with the bright camp and the subordinates of any true god, this number is not much. However, this is just the beginning. 18 demigods were born in just 1 year. The potential of the Abyss camp is evident. Under the demigods is the sanctuary. When the Abyss world invaded the main material worlds, of course some sanctuaries rose up to resist and were bombarded by the sanctuaries from the Abyss. There are also some sanctuaries who chose to surrender, and like those intelligent creatures, they were transformed into Abyss species. In a main material world, perhaps only a few sanctuaries have been transformed. When dozens of prime material worlds accumulate, at this time, even without adding the hundreds of sanctuaries under Sarah Indu and Olivia, the number of sanctuaries in the Abyss world has already reached more than 100. Add up, it is more than 200 sanctuaries. In the Abyss world, these sanctuaries are nothing. They are not even qualified to be pit lords. But outside the Abyss world, in the planes and worlds, these Abyss species that have reached the sanctuary are called the messengers of natural disasters. Even the sanctuary is like this, not to mention legends and epics. The number is not even necessary for statistics. It's the player. At this time, among the players in the Abyss camp, the number of players who have reached the legendary rank has exceeded 1,000. The total number of players in the Abyss camp has also exceeded 100 million. 100 million players. Compared to the total number of players in the game world, it is still a very small part. But the players of this 100 million Abyss camp are no less powerful than those players who belong to the living camp in the game world. Said before, for the vast majority of players in the game world, the hero rank is their upper limit. It was like this in the past, and it is like this in the present. It's not that their potential is not enough to advance to a higher level, but their experience, their dedication, and their opportunities are not enough for them to obtain a higher level career template. What about the Abyss camp? Sumu does not impose any restrictions on career templates. As long as the level is enough, as long as the contribution is enough, any player who joins the Abyss camp can get the corresponding career template and continue to be promoted until the advanced legend. When the mainstream of countless players in the game world stays at the hero level and will stay in the hero level in the future, the mainstream of the players in the Abyss camp is the epic level. And, in the future, the legendary rank will be the mainstream of the Abyss camp players. In this case, the number is insufficient. In terms of quality, the players of the Abyss camp have far exceeded the other players in the game world. Non-cooked. Toolman. This is the current status of this 100 million Abyss camp players. But, in the future, they may not be able to become the mainstream of the Abyss world and become the most powerful force in the Abyss world. After the combat power, it is the world level. At this time, after swallowing up 6 high-level main material worlds, the level of the Abyss world has been promoted from the original medium-sized world to the large-scale world, and it has fully reached the large-scale world, level 3. As a dimension demon, when the Abyss world was promoted to a large world, Sumu's combat power within the world also naturally rose to the level of a higher god. This is in the case of ignoring all other factors and only considering the combat power possessed by the Dimension World and the Dimension Demon God. If other factors are considered, I'm afraid, in the Abyss World, only the existence of the King of the Gods can fight against it. Same. After devouring the worlds, looting the creatures in the worlds, and transforming them into Abyss species, Sumu also gained countless believers. Even if part of it is given to Sarah Indu Olivia, so that they have enough believers to provide themselves with the power of faith, so as to support their own realm improvement and divine power replenishment. The remaining followers of Sumu are also in the hundreds of millions. Simple calculation. In 1 year, these believers can provide him with 10 million points of faith. This is only now. This is also because most of the intelligent creatures who have been moved into the Abyss world and transformed into Abyss species have not provided him with the power of faith. With the passage of time, when these intelligent beings gradually accepted the reality, gradually recognized their own identity, and gradually began to believe in Sumu, this number will increase more than tenfold. Of course, Agnes has not been consecrated, Augustine has not been conferred, Nefarian has not been conferred, and all the Abyss Lords under his command have not been conferred. When they are also conferred gods, when they also integrate their own kingdom of gods into the Abyss world and form that layer of Abyss world, they also need believers and the power of faith. So, the devouring of the world and the search for intelligent creatures will continue. True God, demigod, sanctuary. After the strength composition of the entire Abyss world was coordinated, Sumu knew it. Subsequently, he made some arrangements. After these arrangements were over, Sumu connected with the Abyss world, turned into the Abyss demon god, and quietly waited for that moment to come. Wait, the gods wake up. Also waiting for the game to come to reality. Time flies. When the last day was over, above the void ocean, in the sea of stars transformed by the ancient gods, an ancient star that was originally dim and light suddenly lit up. Kingdom of God. This ancient star is the seat of the divine kingdom of the God of Light. At this time, in the kingdom of God, countless petitioners knelt down outside a pure white shrine, praying devoutly to the figure emitting infinite holy light in the shrine. Every time you pray, a trace of faith is born. When the countless belief powers born from these countless petitioners gathered together and merged into the infinitely beautiful figure, this huge belief power was instantly transformed into divine power. Maintaining the divine position of the God of Holy Light and maintaining the priesthood of the God of Holy Light. Maybe a second, or maybe in a few hours. When the power of faith that even Sumu would be envious of when he saw it gathered together and was transformed into divine power by that figure. In the temple, above the 687 seats of God, the figure quietly woke up. Time required. Great light. When this figure woke up from countless years of slumber, the entire divine kingdom was shrouded in pure white holy light. That figure, like a sun, brought endless light and heat to itself, and it would also be endless. The light and heat radiate out and illuminate the world. Not just the God of Light. When she woke up from her slumber, her divine kingdom, the ancient star where her divine kingdom was located, also radiated endless holy light. It seemed to illuminate the star realm and the entire void ocean. The God of Light, the God of Light, the Lord of Redemption, is back. Sounds like a god. Like a god. After fully awakening, the God of Holy Light communicated with his own divine personality, based on his own vocation, and evoked the laws that existed in each plane and in each world. At this moment, not only the light plane as its base camp, but in all the temples that have the God of Light, and the Lord of Redemption, which represent the divine vocation of the Holy Light, the priests, all heard the divine revelation that sounded from the soul. At this moment, the gods wake up. At this moment, the holy light returns. This moment, the glory of the gods resprinkled all over the plains and the worlds. Not just the God of Light. When the gods woke up from their slumber, in the main material world, the intelligent creatures could clearly see from the night sky, the stars that were originally dull and radiant again. That is the kingdom of God. It is the glory of the gods. Bright plain. Countless angels descended, prayed and sang in the temples, and offered their loyalty and faith to their Lord. Not only the God of Holy Light, but also many gods under the God of Holy Light. Elf plain. Under the auspices of a high priest, elf archers, elf warriors, and elf mages appeared in the tree cities, elegantly but devoutly dedicating their power of faith to their main god and supplementing their own god's divine power. Dwarf plain. At the moment when he felt the return of the dwarves and the god of forging, the kings of the dwarves rushed to the temple of forging with the best blacksmiths under their command, took out the prepared exercise set, and waited for their own instructions. Gods. When the god of blacksmithing was sleeping, they had accumulated countless problems, all of which were obstacles that prevented them from becoming higher-level blacksmiths. Dragon plane. When the light and shadow representing the will of the dragon god descended, tens of thousands of legendary dragons roared in unison in this vast and sparsely populated plain. The majestic dragon roar and the spreading dragon might make many monsters who are only food in this high-level plane shiver. Elemental plane. The king of the four elements, earth, water, wind, and fire, brought his element lords and elemental beings from their respective regions to the center of the element plane, and moved toward the element royal court representing magic and the goddess of the elements. Pray. A goddess. One by one. The gods return. Glory reappears. It was only a few minutes of delay, and in that plane and world, the believers who believed in the gods learned that the gods had awakened and that the gods had come anew. From now on, the temple is no longer a building, but an earthly kingdom of gods. From now on, the idol is no longer a statue, but a representative of the gods on the earth. From now on, the sacrifice is no longer a symbol, but a patron of the gods who can communicate with the gods, borrow the power of the gods, and release the true attack, containing the power of the gods. The darkest hour has passed. The age of God has come. For those worlds that suffered from the abyss invasion a few days ago, the awakening of the gods is even more earth-shattering. Let them see the light and hope again. This moment, it's finally here. Abyss World. Abyss Hall. On the throne. Sumu, who has been integrated with the entire Abyss World and appeared in the form of the Abyss Demon, couldn't help but let out a sigh. Sumu knew the news of the awakening of the gods without anyone's reminder. Because, whenever a deity wakes up from a slumber, the laws represented by their priesthood come alive as never before. Just in the Abyss World, just through the perception of the countless laws and rules in the Abyss World, you already know which god has awakened. Light, redemption, justice, hope, elf, plant, growth, blacksmithing, dwarf, elemental, magic, dragon, courage, valor, beast. A kind of priesthood, kind of rules. When the gods awoke from their slumbers, the laws representing these priesthoods came alive as never before. Extraordinary people who practice these skills can also find that from this moment on, they practice these skills much faster, and even the power of the skills related to these laws is much greater. These all belong to the laws and rules of the Light series. On the contrary, Dark Camp. At present, there are only the 5 clerical laws representing darkness, undead, bad luck, greed, and crows. Because, in the entire Dark Camp, there are only 2 true gods, Serindu and Olivia. The gods awake. The next step is to tear apart the barriers between the game world and the real world, and let the game world come to reality. This moment is coming. The appearance of this moment means that Sumu's enemy has changed from a demigod to a true god since then. Moreover, there is a true god with the existence of a god king, and the number is more than the sanctuary under his command. Only, instead of being nervous, Sumu was slightly excited. For this moment, he has been preparing for 10 years. For this moment, he has experienced countless setbacks and hardships. Today, he already has the strength and confidence to face this moment. Subsequently, while watching the rules and regulations of the game world in the form of a demon, Sumu also devotes a part of his mind to paying attention to the Abyss World, where the number of players has already exceeded 100 million. The game world and the real world are connected. The gods come to reality. This moment may happen in a second, or it may happen in an hour. The most direct response is the player. Just by paying attention to the players in the Abyss camp under his command, Sumu will be able to know the news of the connection between the game world and the real world at the first time, and respond immediately. In the astral world, the ancient stars exude endless light. After waking up from a deep slumber, descending divine revelation for the light plane and the temples among the many main material worlds, and after declaring his return to his believers, the god of holy light also harvested the temples and statues accumulated by the way. Down the power of faith. As the 3 god kings of the light camp, and also the most powerful god king, the main priesthood of the god of holy light is light, not holy light. Compared with the 2 titles of God of Light and Lord of Redemption, Goddess of Light is her most important title. As the most powerful god of the light camp, and also the most powerful god in the game world, the Goddess of Light has the most followers. 1 harvest. Although the massive power of faith could not completely supplement the divine power she lost in the long sleep, it was enough to restore her strength and maintain her to do the next thing to do. Massive power of faith was harvested. and it was quickly transformed into divine power by the Godhead. Subsequently, a majestic spiritual thought poured out from the body of the goddess of light, linking to many laws related to her priesthood. Then, through the vibration of the law, convey the information contained in his spiritual thoughts to the gods he wants to convey. Immediately after, under the three major priesthoods of light, holy light, and redemption, the tail gods as their supplements appeared in the goddess of light, waiting for the orders of their master gods. And after summoning his own gods to the kingdom of God, the divine sense of the goddess of light was linked to the other two god kings, goddess of magic and the elements, as well as dragon god. The communication between the divine senses is extremely fast. Almost at the same time when the three Wang Nua's spiritual thoughts were intertwined, the goddess of light informed the two main gods of the other two major gods of her thoughts and plans. The two god kings also fed back their opinions and reached a consensus with the goddess of light. Then, the divine power converted from the power of faith, just harvested, is almost completely consumed. A blazing holy light burst out from the goddess of light. This holy light is not aimed at the enemy. It is the laws and rules that shake the game world, not just the goddess of light. When the goddess of light consumes all the divine power that has just been harvested to shake the laws and rules of the game world, the elements, the goddess of magic, and the dragon god also make the same actions at the same time. The three kings, the three most powerful players in the gaming world. When these three god kings join forces to shake the rules and regulations of the entire game world, original, at the bottom of the world, between that layer of game world and the real world, that layer of barriers at the level of laws and rules appeared. The gods can touch the existence of laws and rules. But, even for an upper god, they can only influence the laws and rules that exist in everything in the world through the priesthood they own and control. Laws and rules, after all, were revealed by the ancient gods with their own authority and might after they sacrificed themselves. If it's that easy to shake, why do these countless laws and rules keep the planes and worlds running? God King. After all, it is the existence standing at the top of the gods. When the three kings of the gods joined forces and did not hesitate to consume the huge divine power that they had just harvested, when they made a full effort, the rules and regulations of the entire game world were finally shaken. A barrier that only exists at the level of laws and rules appears between the game world and the real world. At this time, Abyss World, when the barriers separating the game world and the real world appeared, Sumu, who appeared in the form of a demon, put all his heart into it. At this moment, the laws and rules of the entire game world are more active than ever. Just a glance. In Sumu's mind, there are many more understandings of various laws and rules. And these insights are the basis for a consummate demigod to condense his divine personality when he initiates the ceremony of conferring the gods. At this moment, not only the gods perceive the existence of laws and rules, but even those demigods can clearly perceive the laws and rules that are unprecedentedly active and instantly gain countless understandings about their desire to obtain the priesthood. 690 at least. For an abyss lord like Agnes who stepped from the peak sanctuary to the upper demigod in a very short period of time, this time alone made her understand the priesthood of death and the death. The understanding of the law has reached a very deep level. It is enough for her to start the ceremony of conferring gods immediately after she has entered the realm of a consummate demigod, condensing her own death godhead. One shake. Countless gods and demigods benefited from it. Of course, that's not the point. While comprehending the countless laws and rules, Sumu's main focus was still on the barriers between the game world and the real world. At this time, on that barrier, more than 2,000 thin rays of light appeared. More than 2,000 rays of light represent more than 2,000 players who have entered the legendary rank. Among them, the players from the Abyss camp alone accounted for half of the number. If the barrier was compared to a dam separating two worlds, the more than 2,000 thin lines were like more than 2,000 ant nests. Without these ant nests, it is the laws and rules that the three gods and kings work together to shake the game world. so that this layer of barriers at the law level emerges, and it is absolutely difficult for them to tear this layer of barriers. However, know if the more than 2,000 players who have stepped into the legendary rank are like more than 2,000 ant nests, adding more than 2,000 defects and breakthroughs to the originally flawless barrier. More than 2,000 players who communicate between two worlds. It is the breakthrough to tear this barrier. The first shake made the world barrier emerge, and also made the light representing more than 2,000 legendary players emerge. Subsequently, the endless holy light turns into a divine sword. A golden dragon shadow appeared in the void. The energy storm composed of the four elements of earth, water, wind, and fire continued to roar. It was just a momentary stagnation, and the attacks from the three god kings immediately bombarded the barrier. Boom! There seems to be a silent shock resounding in the hearts of every creature in the game world. The laws and rules of the entire game world are more active than ever. At this moment, the countless gods and demigods have a clearer understanding of the laws and rules, and their understanding of the priesthood to be mastered is also more in-depth. Even the beings under the demigods, they all felt that they seemed to understand something, and they broke through a small realm. This, only for Aboriginal people. Player? When the three God Kings made their first move to shake the rules and regulations of the game world together, the countless players from the real world did not feel anything. When the three God Kings made their second shot, they directly shook the barrier between the game world and the real world. Game world. Abyss world. Among the low-level planes or high-level planes, the countless players from the Abyss camp or the Living camp all disappeared from their original places. Broken link. Yes. When the barrier between the game world and the real world is shaken, the connection between countless players and the game world is also disconnected, no matter what rank, no matter what faction, no matter what race. All players are forcibly kicked out of the game world at this moment. The same is true for the Abyss camp. In the void, the attacks from the three God Kings continued. The more than 2,000 rays of light have not disappeared. Along with the attack of the three God Kings, based on the more than 2,000 rays of light, small cracks began to appear in the barrier. Every time it was shaken, the crack expanded a bit. When the three gods did not hesitate to waste their divine power and shake the barrier again and again, the light spots and the cracks were connected together, forming huge cracks. When these huge cracks are completely penetrated and spread all over the barrier, it is when the barrier is broken and the game world and the real world are completely connected. At this moment, Sumu stopped comprehending the laws and rules and focused all his attention on the barrier that had begun to shatter. When the barrier is broken, it is when the gods come. At the same time, it's time for him to come to reality. Real world. In a high-end community in the magic capital, a player nicknamed Manhwa was lying in the virtual game cabin, looking blankly at the game login interface in front of him. Link is broken. 5 blood-red characters appeared in the center of the game's login interface. Except for these 5 characters, the entire game's login interface was pitch black, with no text or images. Game disconnected? Manhwa was a little dazed. Like many other players, he has invested 10 years of time and energy in the game's second world. Not only becoming a top player who has stepped into the upper legend, but also a player with hundreds of thousands of people. The president of a large game guild. 10 years of gaming career. He has encountered many times what seemed to be a bug at the time, but was later confirmed to be a bug of an Easter egg, but never encountered a broken link. After being dazed, there is impatience. Before being kicked out of the game world, he was tackling a big mission with the elite players in his guild. If the game is disconnected for too long, causing the mission to fail, his losses will not only be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Countless preparations in the early stage will be in vain. In the first time, Manhwa boarded the game forum. Really? At this time, on the official forum of Second World, all the subforums have been flooded with posts from players. And these posts, which are increasing in numbers by the tens of thousands every second, are all about the same theme: broken links to the game world. Some players complained. Some players cursed. Some players asked the game official to give an explanation, and some players called the game official. Of course, like the previous rage of the players, the game official did not give any explanation, and the official phone number that pretended to be on the forum was just an empty number. Can only wait. Seeing this scene, ManhwaRecap felt a lot better. Not only is the link between yourself and the game world disconnected, but all players are disconnected from the game world. It is not only that he will suffer heavy losses due to this chain disconnection, there should be a large number of players who will suffer heavy losses due to this chain disconnection. When only oneself is unlucky, it is naturally difficult to accept. When everyone is unlucky, ManhwaRecap unknowingly accepted this result. I feel much better. Just when ManhwaRecap was about to post a post and join the crusade against the game company, a roar that seemed to crack his eardrums, as if it sounded between the whole world, startled him. Earthquake? Explode? War? A lot of thoughts popped into my mind in an instant. Not wanting to continue posting, after lying in the virtual game cabin for several years, ManhwaRecap left the virtual game room for the first time, and opened his own door for the first time, and appeared on the rooftop. Then, he saw a scene that he will never forget. At this time, it's still daytime. At this time, in the sky that was originally occupied by blue sky and white clouds, dark cracks appeared one after another at some point in time. That scene, as if the sky were a piece of glass. And from an unknown attack, the piece of glass was shattered. Boom! Earthquake. Not a delusion, nor a dazzle. ManhwaRecap clearly saw, when a divine sword exuding infinite light, a giant dragon phantom like a golden light, and a four-color lotus bombarded the glass-like sky. The deafening roar sounded again. There seemed to be many more dark cracks that existed in the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Bombarded again and again, roared again and again. Under the gaze of ManhwaRecap, the dark cracks in the sky became more and bigger. It was originally concentrated in one place and quickly spread to the entire sky. When the bright sword, the dragon phantom, and the four-color lotus came again, wow! The glass-like sky could no longer withstand the bombardment again and again, and it shattered with a bang. Of course, it's not glass. Those shattered fragments disappeared quietly in the process of falling, as if they merged into the surrounding sky. But behind the broken sky, what appeared was only darkness. Pitch black, profound, as if it were an abyss. ManhwaRecap was stunned. Staring at the pitch black that appeared after the sky shattered, his face was dazed. He was a little uncertain whether he was in the game world or the real world. The divine sword that exudes infinite light, the mighty golden dragon phantom, and the incomparably powerful four-color lotus flower. Shouldn't these all be found in the game world? Besides, as a player of the Abyss Camp, and he is also regarded as the top player in the Abyss Camp, he has not seen the fragmented scenes of the sky. Whenever the Abyss invades other worlds, whenever the Abyss world begins to devour the main material worlds, the first thing to do is to smash its world crystal wall and then devour it. The Lord of the Abyss world, Sumu, broke the world crystal wall of a main material world, devoured the whole world, and turned it into nutrients for the growth of the Abyss world. How similar is the scene in front of you? Only, games are games, and reality is reality. Even if the game's second world is so real that it is not much different from the real world, and so real that countless players choose to settle down and marry in it, it is still just a game. And now, for a time, ManhwaRecap confused the difference between games and reality. It's not just ManhwaRecap. In other cities, in other countries, and in other continents, the sky-shattering roar sounded when three kinds of existences that only existed in the game world bombarded the sky. When the sky was really broken because of this bombardment, revealing in the dark and deep time that followed, countless players walked out of the house, looking at this scene with dazed and unbelievable faces. Player. Just dazed and unbelievable. Those ordinary people who have never entered the game are panicked. This scene is like the end of the day. It is not the end of the sci-fi direction in various science fiction movies and novels, but the end of the mythological direction recorded in various ancient books. Not only that, standing on the rooftop, He stared blankly at the depths of the sky after it was broken. Naming Lihua seemed to feel that, along with the shattering of the sky, something was rapidly gushing out from the depths, spread into the real world, but also fill in the real world. This feeling, it seems, game? With the feeling in his heart, Nan Ming Lihua climbed up the guardrail of the rooftop and stood on the guardrail of the rooftop. At this time, a lot of figures have gathered on this rooftop. Among them are players, and there are ordinary people who have been maintaining the operation of the real world and have not entered the game world. When they saw Nan Ming Lihua's actions, many people exclaimed. Several players with relatively strong bodies rushed towards this side quickly, as if they wanted to catch Naming Lihua before he fell from the guardrail on the rooftop. Ignore those exclamations. I didn't even notice the kind-hearted people who rushed over. Standing on the edge of the guardrail, Nan Ming Lihua slowly took a step forward with the feeling in his heart. One step at a time. Seems to be expected. Immediately after, he stepped out again. At this time, his feet completely left the guardrail of the rooftop, and he was less than half a meter apart, standing outside the rooftop out of thin air, dozens of meters above the ground in mid-air. On the roof, the exclamations sounded again. This time, the exclamations of those people were no longer because they saw a person who wanted to jump off the building, but because they saw a person standing in the air outside the rooftop without any basis. Like magic. Also like a fairy tale. The fastest rushing figure stopped abruptly when it was only more than 1 meter away from Nan Ming. His face was dull and unbelievable. One of his hands was still stretched out, and he seemed to be scratching weakly. The scene where the sky shattered was beyond his imagination. The scene in front of him was even more beyond his imagination. At this time, Nan Ming Lihua didn't bother to pay attention to the voice on the rooftop. Walking out of the rooftop with the feeling in his heart, standing in the air with the feeling in his heart, Nan Ming Lihua's heart was not surprised at all, but a trace of deep fear emerged. It's not surprising that it stands out of thin air, because the powerhouse of the legendary rank has the ability to fly. In the game world, he was already familiar with this ability. With a thought, the familiar attribute panel in the game world appeared in front of him. When his mind moves again, all the equipment that belongs to him in the game world also emerges from him. Blink of an eye. The young man who was standing in midair disappeared, replaced by an abyss demon who was wearing black full-body heavy armor, holding a double battle axe, and exuding a terrifying aura. See this scene. Among the many figures on the rooftop, those who were also players of the second world also understood something. 0. Ask for flowers. Mind a move. They opened their properties panel. Mind a move. They have changed from ordinary people to extraordinary people with various powerful attributes and skills in the game world. By this time, Naming Lihua also understood what was pouring out from the broken sky, pouring into this world and occupying this world. That's clearly the rules and regulations of the game world, as well as the energy of heaven and earth and various elemental energy from the game world. Games, invasion of reality. The more the laws and rules of the game world erode the real world, the more vitality and energy of the game world pour into the real world, and the stronger the power of these extraordinary people in the game world will be. From 1/10 to 1/5 to 1/3. Wait until the laws and rules of the game world completely replace the physical laws of the real world, and until the vitality and energy concentration of the game world pouring into reality are high enough. 0. Their strength in the game world will also be completely brought to reality. Only, at this time, Nan Ming Lihua's heart was not surprised at all. Instead, there was a deep sense of panic and fear. When second world is just a game, all players including him can fully enjoy the life in the game world, and enjoy the second life that is completely different from the real world. They can raise their butcher knives to monsters arbitrarily, even in the face of monsters 10 times and 100 times stronger than themselves. They dare to charge forward with a smile, and they are only resurrected once. But when the game becomes real, when the game invades reality, when they lost the privilege of resurrection, when their world became the world of the game, when their identity changed from a player to an aboriginal, who doesn't panic? Who is not afraid? Abyss. Invasion. This is the only explanation that Manhwa can think of for the visions of heaven and earth happening in front of him. He was the first batch of players to join the Undead camp, and also the first batch of players to be transformed into the Abyss camp. When he was in the game world, every time the Plane War was started, every time he invaded other worlds, it made him excited. Because this is a gluttonous feast for players of the Abyss camp. But when the target of the Abyss invasion became the real world where they were rooted, even the hardcore of the Abyss camp, a deep fear rose in his heart. The world is connected. Game invasion. What will happen next? Maintaining the form of an Abyss demon and standing in midair, Manhwa stared at the deep darkness that remained after the sky was broken. Next moment, his heart suddenly tightened as if being held by an invisible big hand. Then, he saw a majestic, vast, and magnificent figure gradually emerging from the darkness. Manhwa is not the only player who realizes that his abilities, skills, and equipment in the game world have been brought to the real world. Not even the first. As the laws and rules of the game world erode the real world more and more seriously, the laws and rules in the game world gradually replace the physical laws of the real world. Without being reminded by others, more and more players felt their own strangeness and obtained the ability from the game world with the feeling in their hearts. Panel. Attributes. Skill. Equipment. Even the various scrolls and props they have in their inventory have all been brought to the real world. But, just like Manhwa, these abilities and equipment that were brought to the real world did not give these players a sense of security at all. The Abyss camp has always been a popular camp in the game world. Abyss invasion has always been a popular event in the game world. When the sky is broken, when the game invades, when the laws and rules from the game world replace the physical laws of the real world, the first reaction that pops up in the minds of most players is the invasion of the real world by the Abyss world. They don't know how games can become real. They don't even know why the faction in the game world has the ability to invade reality. They just know the Abyss invasion means the end of the world. They only know that once the figure of Sumu's demon god, 690, appears outside the world, it means that their world no longer exists, but becomes part of the continued growth of the Abyss world. At this time, now, countless players stared at the sky, waiting for that moment to come. Slowly, the laws and rules from the game world and the real world are getting better and better. Slowly, the concentration of vitality and various attribute energies contained in the real world is also getting higher and higher. Until this intrusion reaches a certain level, a phantom of a god slowly emerged from the darkness behind the sky. Grand, vast, sacred, magnificent. To the surprise of all players, the phantom that emerged from the darkness behind the sky was not the phantom of Sumu that exuded endless terror, but a phantom of a true god. It is easy to distinguish between true gods and demon gods. Even an ordinary person, when he sees the phantom of a god, will naturally appear in his mind the title and vocation of the god, unless the god deliberately hides his breath. Obviously, the phantom of the true god did not hide his aura. When the phantom of the god appeared from behind the sky, all the players who saw this scene, as well as the minds of ordinary people, naturally emerged the name of the god. God of Justice. Those players who have had contact with the faith, or simply changed the profession of the temple, know that this God of Justice is a god under the goddess of light. Is the God of Justice here to save us? Save our world from being invaded by the Abyss? When they saw the phantom of the God of Justice, many players who believed in the gods had such thoughts in their hearts. Pity. Reality is often cruel. When the huge phantom of the God of Justice emerged from behind the sky, his hands exuded endless divine light, tearing apart something like a film. Then, this god, who was already a high-ranking god in the game world, was squeezed into the real world and descended into the real world. As mentioned earlier, the gods are on par with the world. When a god wants to enter the interior of the world, it will attract the instinctive counterattack of the world. If a god forcibly descends on a world, while resisting the world's counterattack, its existence alone will cause the laws and rules of a world to be disordered. Original. In the real world, there are no extraordinary factors and no world instinct. It is the game world's invasion of the real world that makes the laws and rules of the real world perfect, and the instinct that belongs to the real world is born. When the god of justice comes forcibly, the immature world instinct just born in the real world is not enough to resist the advent of a higher god. Take time. The laws and rules of the whole world began to be disordered and rioted. The result: severe storm, thunder and lightning, volcano eruption, the tsunami hits. Almost all disasters that human beings can imagine are sweeping the world with the advent of gods at this moment. Just a moment. There are millions of lives buried in these outbreaks of disasters. This scene was seen by everyone. No matter who he is, no matter where he is in the real world, as long as he raises his head, he will be able to see that magnificent figure descending into the world. Similarly, as long as they see this scene, they will naturally know that all this is brought about by the coming of the true God. The spirits come. It brings not glory, but disaster. Original. Most players think that the appearance of the celestial phenomenon means the abyss invasion. It was not until the god of justice appeared that they knew that what the real world was facing was not an abyss invasion, but the arrival of the true god. The expected abyss invasion did not come. The expected real world was swallowed up, and all the real-world creatures were transformed into abyss species and did not appear. On the contrary, the true God has come. Countless disasters swept the world, and countless creatures lost their lives. At this moment, they would rather invade the real world than the abyss world, rather than see the true God come. The invasion of the abyss will at least not harm the creatures in it. This is the conclusion drawn from the invasion of dozens of main material worlds, but will transform all the creatures into abyss species. God is coming. The catastrophes that accompany them alone kill millions of lives every moment. Finally, the God of justice has completely stepped into the real world and descended next to a city on the North American continent. At this time, the city has been devastated by a thundercloud storm. When the God of justice came, a player who had stepped into the legendary rank could not accept that his family was killed in the disaster. He roared and took his weapon to the sky, wanting to take revenge on the gods. Pity. Just as his figure rose, a divine light flashed, and everything about that legendary player was wiped out. Subsequently, the majestic voice of the God of justice also spread throughout the world. Those who believe in our Lord will enjoy eternal life. Betray, my Lord will perish forever. In short, trust me and you can live. If you don't believe it, you will die here. At this time, the players finally realized what happened, and finally realized that the gods are just a kind of life that has evolved to a certain height. They are not as omniscient and omnipotent as recorded in the books of the real world, nor as benevolent and savior as the clergy in the game world claim. It's no different from humans. The so-called kindness, the so-called holiness, and the so-called light are just a means for the gods to spread their beliefs in order to gain believers and gain the power of belief. Demon gods and true gods are essentially no different. Just the difference in power attributes. Only, they woke up a little late. The true God has come, the disaster has been born, and their world is about to come to an end. And the insignificant strength they brought out of the game world, even dealing with a demigod, is a fantasy. What a true God! What's more, it is a powerful upper god among the true gods. Fear, anger, panic, despair. All kinds of negative emotions circulated in the hearts of players and people. Some players choose to surrender, kneeling on the ground and praying devoutly, hoping that this will allow this god to put away his anger and eliminate the disaster that has swept the world. Some players choose to resist, and when they see the truth, they are unwilling to surrender, preferring to regard themselves as insignificant. The power of the attack to the gods. The player's choice did not interfere with the God of Justice. His primary goal is to destroy the real world, and his secondary goal is to gather these peculiar beings, bring them back to the game world, and slowly cultivate them into believers in the Lord. The former can be achieved only by his presence. Without experiencing all kinds of horrors, without witnessing the power of gods, these special existences whose homes were destroyed. Why should they believe in him? Why should they believe in his main god? This is, in the first place, the easiest strategy. The god of justice is not the only god to come. Actually, after the god of justice came to the North American continent, another god came from the game world and appeared in other regions of the real world. The goddess of magic and the elements descended on the European continent. The god of elves is a god who descends upon the archipelago where the sun never sets. The resident god of forging descended on the polar bear empire. The god of competition belongs to the gods and descends on the 3 continents of India. The goddess of the business goddess has come to the Australian mainland, etc. Destroying the real world is the will of the 3 god kings, and no one can stop it. But, while destroying the real world, harvesting a group of special believers with infinite potential is something that every god wants to do, by the way. A deity descended, occupying a piece of territory. And the more gods that come to the real world, the more disordered and riotous the laws and rules of the real world will be. When almost every area is occupied by the tail god of that god, endless lightning roared in the sky. A frantic storm swept through all sides. In the cracked earth, there are huge cracks that are bottomless. The world is disintegrating. The real world is ending. Destroy. It was originally the destiny of this world. Countless players rose up to resist and were easily wiped out by the gods. Countless players chose to surrender, but instead received the protection of the gods. Slowly, in this world-destroying catastrophe, more and more people choose to surrender. And the East, too big. It has nearly 1/5 of the population of the entire real world and nearly 1/6 of the players in the game world. The 3 kings. The goddess of light chose North America. The goddess of magic and elements chose Europe. The goddess of the dragon god chose Asia. To be precise, most of the players in the Abyss 5.5 camp are players. Thus, when the gods came, also had the largest number of legendary players, accounting for half of all the legendary players in the entire game world. Only, when a golden dragon that is also a high-level god descends, these players did not have the slightest fighting intent. The gap is too big. Even if you tie all the humans and all the players in the entire together, you may not be able to break the defense of the thousands of meters-long golden dragon.
Eat it.
With just one breath, or a magical technique, it may be possible to wipe the entire map. No one wants to surrender. No one can resist disaster. Just when some players saw the huge space cracks brought about by the collapse of the world, they wanted to escape from the real world and into the game world. A soft sigh, but it suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. Abyss? Abyss. At the end of the world, Manhwa, who was struggling to protect his family, suddenly had a hope in his heart. This is the leader of the Abyss camp and the master of the Abyss world, the voice of the Abyss devil. In the Abyss world, he had heard this voice more than once. When the true God comes and destroys the world, perhaps, the appearance of the Abyss demon god will be their hope. Actually, long before the god of justice entered the real world, Sumu had already forked an energy incarnation, sneaked into the real world quietly, and hid in. The gods still have to wait for the laws and rules of the game world to gradually erode and replace the physical laws of the real world. Just sneak into Sumu in the form of energy incarnation without so much trouble. Of course, dive in. He did not prevent the coming of the gods. On the one hand, what sneaks into the real world is just an incarnation of his energy. The destruction of the real world is the will of the 3 god kings of the Bright Camp, and no one can change it. Not to mention that Sumu has not been conferred a god yet. Even if he has already been conferred a god, it may be difficult for him to shelter the real world under the siege of the 3 god kings and many gods of the entire Bright Camp. Just an energy incarnation? Not enough to resist the coming of the gods. On the other hand, the destruction of the real world is in Sumu's interest. That's right. It is in Sumu's interest to sit on the sidelines and watch the gods die when the destruction of the real world can no longer be changed. Even if he tries to stop it, it is difficult for him to change the ending of the destruction of the real world. In this situation, rushing to take action is undoubtedly putting oneself under the muzzle of the three God Kings and the entire Bright Camp, and making himself the target of the three God Kings and the entire Bright Camp. Expose yourself in advance and get no benefit. What about watching from the sidelines? The first to come to reality are the gods. It is still the gods who bring doomsday to the real world. When the death of the gods has become a conclusion, the great aura that the gods originally blessed themselves with in order to promote their beliefs suddenly disappeared. At this time, the true gods who were supposed to save the world became the murderers who destroyed the real world, and the demon god from the abyss world turned into a hero of salvation under this background? Although not so simple, but what it brings is to let the gods and their image in the minds of human beings in the real world, at least on the same starting line. Like now, when the disasters that swept the world broke out, when countless creatures lost their lives in these disasters, when the true God became the murderer who destroyed the real world. Real world. Those Abyss Camp players who were born in the Abyss Camp and also appeared in the world in the form of Abyss demons at this time, using their insignificant power to protect their families. I can't help but compare the invasion of the Abyss with the coming of the gods. Also destroy the world. The same is the migration of living beings. The same is to transform each human being and each intelligent creature into his own believers. At least, when the Abyss invades and devours the world in the game world, the master of the Abyss world and the army from the Abyss world will protect those intelligent creatures well, even if there are casualties. Basically, his own strength is too weak to withstand the transformation process of Abyss and die. Essentially, the two ways are no different. But emotionally, undoubtedly, Sumu's way is more acceptable. Besides, what is happening now is not the invasion of the Abyss, but the coming of the gods. The gods perish. Under this huge contrast, they prefer that the real world faces an Abyss invasion, rather than the destruction of the gods. So, the countless players who joined the Abyss camp in the game world began to pray, and they hoped that at the moment when the world ended, their master would appear and save them. Same. There are also many players who are not in the Abyss camp who think of the Abyss camp and the Abyss devil. True God is extinct. These gods from the Light camp have naturally become the enemies of all human beings in the real world. The Abyss is the enemy of the gods. The enemy of the enemy may not be his ally, but at least there is a possibility to help and save himself. Then, when the death of the gods has become a conclusion, when the Bright Camp has become the mortal enemy of the real world, Sumu, the Abyss demon god who is on the sidelines, has wonderfully become the only hope of many players. Original. He just wanted to take this opportunity to snipe the gods, and at the same time snatch away the more than 100 million players who joined the Abyss camp and move him to the Abyss world. And now, he has become the savior in the hearts of countless players in the real world. The gods come. Long before they descended, the three God Kings had already divided their respective descending locations. The Dragon God's territory is exactly also a dragon. The Golden Dragon under the Dragon God's command and the Totem Dragon of the Belief are two completely different existences. The Golden Dragon has come, and the person belonging to the Upper God has just come. This has increased the level of disaster in this territory by several levels. The number of casualties, it is also skyrocketing at this moment. It is precisely because of this that when the huge golden dragon with a height of several thousand meters appeared from the game world and was about to land on the territory, the despair in the hearts of the players reached the extreme, and the expectations for Sumu were also reached the extreme. At this time, a sigh sounded. Sumu is ready to shoot. A space crack opened, and Sumu's body replaced the energy incarnation and appeared in the real world. In terms of the personality of the Dimension Demon God, Sumu is also a superior god, and his advent will also lead to the instinctive counterattack of the world. It's just that, in the context of the destruction of the gods, all the disasters exacerbated by the arrival of Sumu's body are all blamed on the Golden Dragon. The body comes. At this time, Sumu's body is still the realm of the pinnacle demigod, which is completely incomparable with the upper gods like the golden dragon. But such a pinnacle demigod is a pinnacle demigod whose four-dimensional attributes have all reached the limit of 1,000,000 points. The combat power of the pure body is temporarily unable to be emperor. But 690 plus his own skills. Sumu at that time has completely possessed the terrifying power to fight against a higher god, and even defeat a higher god. Endless Bone God of War. When that sigh sounded, when the deity came to reality, Sumu activated his only mythical skill at the first time. Then, endless skeletal essence poured out from the void, turning into delicate parts and blessings on his body. Step out. Sumu crossed a distance of thousands of kilometers and appeared high in the sky where the golden dragon descended. In an instant, the bone devil with a head as high as 1,000 feet also appeared in the sight of countless players who fell into despair. Thousands of demons. The bones are the body. When this more shocking figure than the golden dragon appeared, those players who hoped that Sumu would come were sluggish. What's going on? Abyss Demon God, their master, has really come? Not just come. When the form of the skeleton god of war is completely condensed and formed, when his own strength has completely reached its peak, Sumu waved the scythe of the god of death, which also turned into a giant, and brought out a dark light across the sky, slashing towards the descending golden dragon above. Devil save the world. The abyss is coming. Upper god. Even the pinnacle of the upper gods. When his state reached its peak, Sumu had already determined his combat power at this time. With the limit value of all four-dimensional attributes reaching 1,000,000 points, the mythical skill, Endless Bone War God, is activated. His combat power not only broke through to the realm of the upper god, but also reached the peak of the upper god. At this time, he was enough to suppress a high-ranking god. At this time, he is already enough to exert all the power of Death Scythe. A pitch-black light pierced through the void, slashing towards the golden dragon. At this moment, the golden dragon that had just arrived and had not yet set foot on the territory, the golden dragon with the realm of the upper gods, suddenly felt a kind of trembling feeling. Sumu suddenly appeared. The dark light burst out suddenly. It has no time to avoid the light that has been cut out and is about to be cut on itself. At this time, it can only inject its own divine power into the dragon scales and improve the defense of the dragon scales as much as possible to resist this attack that even it feels extremely dangerous. Divine infusion. The golden dragon scales, which were originally made of gold, burned with golden flames. Countless runes flowed on the dragon scales. The physical defense of the golden dragon has also increased several times at this moment. However, when the dark rays of light carrying the full power of the Scythe of Death struck, the divine armor of the golden dragon was easily torn apart. The golden dragon scales flowing with countless runes were easily torn apart, unhindered, breaking through the heavy defenses of the golden dragon. This blow from Sumu. Not only the dragon scales of the golden dragon were torn apart, but also the flesh and blood of the golden dragon. The bones of the golden dragon were cut off. Pale golden blood flowed out like a waterfall, falling into the sky. When the power of this blow is over, the belly of this giant golden dragon of thousands of meters was almost cut open. To know, this is the body of a god. Even if the golden dragon, like all other gods, has just woken up from a deep sleep, it has not harvested enough power of faith, and its strength has not reached its peak. This blow is enough to see Sumu's current combat power. At the cost of the severe injury that the abdomen was almost completely cut open, the golden dragon resisted the fatal blow. Body vacated. A steady stream of divine power poured out from the godhead, quickly repairing the injuries on his body, and the golden dragon looked at the white-boned demon god below with some uncertainty. The bones are the body. Dark demon. As a high-level god, the gods of the golden dragon's bright camp are familiar with each other, and it can also judge that the bone demon god, who has been severely injured by this blow, belongs to the dark camp just based on the perception of the breath. Only, at the end of the ancient times, the true gods of the dark camp all fell. This demon god, who obviously has the bones of a superior god's combat power, where did it come from? Is it difficult? During the period of their sleep, not only did the true god appear in the dark camp, but this true god also grew to the level of a higher god during the period of their sleep. This conclusion is almost a fantasy. The bright camp, the three god kings. Under the three gods, there are less than 20 high-ranking gods. Below these less than 20 upper-level gods are the gradually increasing number of middle-level gods and lower-level gods. Which of the existing higher gods in the world was not successfully conferred a god in the ancient times, and it took hundreds of thousands of years to successfully grow to the level of a higher god? Their sleep time is not short. But compared to the hundreds of thousands of years of growth, it was like a drop in the bucket. It was in such a short period of time that a dark demigod was successfully conferred a god. How should he grow up and grow to a level that he wants to rival? VQV equals hashtag. The golden dragon was puzzled. It doesn't know where the bone demon god incarnated by Su-mu came from. It just knows. It seems that the purpose of this line of work will not be so smooth. At the cost of serious injury, the golden dragon bought himself time to heal and release magic. With the consumption of divine power, the wounds on its body are recovering rapidly, and various divine arts are also released, greatly improving its defense and combat effectiveness. Cut out in one hit. Su-mu did not pursue the victory. With a body as high as 1,000 meters tall, standing high in the sky, after fully adapting to his current combat power, Su-mu paused lightly. Endless power spreads. The whole tree is called a painting. The disaster in the territory was forcibly suppressed. Through this extremely short period of time, Su-mu also spread his huge perception, allowing the power of the world and the power of space gushing out of the abyss world to spread rapidly, covering the entire body. Mind a move. Next moment. The entire big, including the players who occupy 1/6 of the entire game world, and the population that occupies 1/5 of the entire real world, and all the buildings, creatures, plants, and even its hundreds of meters thick, all dragged into the abyss world by Su-mu. In one breath, taking away 1/6 of the players and 1/5 of the population of the entire real world, Su-mu's primary goal of coming to the real world this time has been achieved. From a profit point of view, these players and populations with infinite potential are enough to become one of the most important forces in the Abyss world, not only providing experience points for the Abyss Lords and subsequent Abyss Lords, but their own growth rate is enough to make them the main force of the Abyss world in the future. Emotionally, when the destruction of the real world is already doomed, drag the previous life's own homeland and all the creatures in it into the Abyss world and transform it into an Abyss species. Then let them die in the endless disasters in the real world, or be forcibly brainwashed and become the culprits who destroy the real world, believers of the gods, or escape into the game world with endless hatred and live in the world all day long, in the pursuit of God's forces. Much better. Those who want to fight and avenge the gods, they can still grow in the Abyss world, participate in the plane wars one after another, and attack the sphere of influence of the gods. Those who want peace and just want to live in peace, they can also live peacefully in the Abyss world, under the protection of Su-mu and the Abyss Lord, and only need to pay their faith regularly. This is the best ending for them. By dragging the whole body into the Abyss world, Su-mu's primary goal has been achieved. Without worries, he can devote himself to the battle of the many gods. Of course, players and populations in other countries, in other regions, cannot be ignored. If there is a chance, he will still drag the population of these countries and regions into the Abyss world, transform them into Abyss species, and become part of the power of the Abyss world. Only, obviously not that easy. A god, even if it is only a lower god, is enough to easily scan the whole world with his own divine sense. The place where the gods descended was already divided by the three god kings. Only those corners that were ignored by the three kings of the gods were the places that the remaining gods patronized and occupied. So, there was basically no conflict between the incarnated gods. And Su-mu appeared. The process of Jing Tai Nixuan's heavy damage to the golden dragon and then the process of dragging the entire body into the abyss world, in the scan of the divine senses of the gods. Two responses. The first reaction is that the gods who have already occupied the corresponding area, like Sumu, immediately transferred the players and humans in the corresponding area to the game world's own sphere of influence, regardless of whether they have surrendered or not. Wang Nuo's is to prepare to fight. In the second reaction, in the area occupied by these gods, those players and humans transferred to the game world and all aimed at Sumu. The real world is on the verge of collapse. The will of the three god kings was also completed. When those many players and humans have been transferred, waiting to be forcibly brainwashed and transformed into their believers in the future, this dark true god who appeared from nowhere has naturally become their next target. There is no true god in the dark camp. They don't need to know where this dark god came from. They also don't need to know how this dark true god grew up. Discover, destroy. Now that he has appeared, let him fall here. In this way, believers are still their believers. The world is still their world. Quietly, Sumu's opponent has changed from a golden dragon at the level of a high-level god to all the gods who have descended into the real world, including the three high-level gods. And, at this time, that god, that one after another of infinitely powerful divine arts has already attacked this way, gods. Headed by the three high-level gods, the god of justice, the golden dragon, and the god of fire, who descended to the real world, the number of gods whose existence led to the destruction of the real world was absolutely numerous. The three upper gods, more than 10 median gods, and nearly 100 lower gods. When this force gathers together and launches an attack on a certain existence, I am afraid that no one can withstand it except the King of Gods. No one can defeat it. There is only one exception. That is, the Dimension Demon. Just woken up from a slumber, these gods don't know the details of Sumu. It is even less clear that Sumu's power in front of them is completely formed by the combination of the four-dimensional attribute limit that has reached 100 points plus, Endless Bone War God. This mythical skill plus Death Scythe. Essentially, his highest evolutionary route is the Abyss Demon God. That is to say, as long as he is willing, Sumu at this time can return to the Abyss world at any time and escape safely under the siege of many gods. Only, Sumu wasn't going to do that. Originally, he was about to leave. However, after something happened, Sumu was not only not ready to leave under the siege of the gods, but also ready to hunt the gods. The world is instinctive. No one can say exactly what the instincts of the world are and how they arise. Some people think that the instinct of the world is the collection of all beings with intelligence in a world. Some people think that the instinct of the world is the blessing to the world before the ancient gods disappeared. In any case, the instincts of the world are real. The same is true in the real world. Even if the instinct of this world has just been born not long, even if the instinct of this world is so immature, after all, it exists. When the gods come, when the gods use their own 693 existence to cause the laws and rules of the real world to violently move, causing countless disasters to break out, destroying countless living beings in an instant, and leading the entire world to the end. Sumu, I feel the resentment, hatred, and unwillingness from the world. It's as if, at this moment, the instinct of the world has become an undead-like existence. As if, at this moment, the world instinctively wants to take revenge on the gods, but can't make any act of revenge, and can only wait for the moment when the world is destroyed in resentment, hatred, and unwillingness. The gods are the objects the world wants revenge for. And Sumu, this abyss demon god, who stands on the opposite side of the gods, is recognized by the world's instinct as a friend. So, only Sumu can feel the resentment, hatred, and unwillingness from a world. Only Sumu himself. It is possible to perceive the breath of death and destruction that is hidden under the laws and rules of constant chaos and riots, because of the destruction of a world. It was after sensing this resentment, this hatred, and this unwillingness that Sumu changed his mind. Did not leave. Instead, prepare to hunt the gods. The resentment, hatred and unwillingness from the world? In that case, let this king see how far your resentment, hatred, and unwillingness can reach. The gods are coming. One after another, magical techniques with enough power to shatter a continent struck, each standing in the sky. Instead of dodging, Sumu opened his arms as if to welcome those attacks. He, greeted, of course, not the attack of the gods. What he greeted, the last gift from the real world. The earth began to crack. Blazing magma spewed out, straight into the sky at a height of 10,000 meters. The oceans are starting to dry up. Endless water vapor and cloud lightning gathered together, forming a cloud of thunderstorms that surpassed the level of demigods. Mountains collapsed. River backflow. Among these doomsday celestial phenomena, a power that is so pure that Sumu can't imagine, no less than the abyss world, with a strong breath of death and destruction, poured into his body like the Yangtze River. This kind of power did not enhance his true combat power. But when this power poured into his body and merged into his body like water and milk, Sumu felt that he had returned to the abyss world. Yes, for revenge, the world gave everything it had to Sumu. At this moment, he has become the master of the real world. Just like in the abyss world, he does not need to consume a single cent of energy, just rely on his own thoughts. Control everything in the real world. In the real world, there is no life. When the world instinctively gave everything to Sumu, this originally extremely prosperous and extremely rich world also completely entered the doomsday before the end. In such a world, in such an environment, Sumu can unscrupulously exert the power of the whole world and take revenge on the gods. The gods are coming? Magic attack? When all kinds of magic techniques that were enough to shatter even a continent attacked, Sumu just thought about it, and the earth under his feet suddenly swelled. The stone walls that were hundreds of kilometers and thousands of kilometers thick at every turn rose up like a mountain range, firmly surrounding Sumu. A magical technique can shatter a mountain range. Divine art salvo, enough to shatter the entire earth. But when supported by the laws and rules of the entire world, and the source of the entire world as support, it will be smashed to pieces countless times. And this stone wall can also be reborn countless times. Finally, when the hundreds of divine techniques were bombarded, in addition to making the already broken earth even more broken, Sumu has not been hurt in the slightest. And what about Sumu? Standing on top of a pillar that reached the sky, his mind moved, and dozens of pitch-black chains containing the aura of extreme death and destruction pierced out of the void, like a black giant python, moving towards lightning-like speed. A god is attacking. Chain of laws. The dark chain looks like a dragon. At the end of the chain is a triangular spike formed by the extreme aura of death and destruction. When these dozens of chains of laws were formed, the dark chain seemed to seal the sky, shrouding the figures of all gods in them. His brows were slightly wrinkled, and a divine sword appeared in the hand of the god of justice, severing the chains that were bound towards him. The figure flickered, and the god of fire turned into countless tiny sparks and spread out, and after leaving the range blocked by the chain of laws, they gathered again. Roaring up to the sky and using his dragon body to the extreme, the golden dragon tore off the chains that entangled it and escaped from the bondage. The three upper gods. Even if this dark chain is condensed from the laws and rules of the real world, it is still difficult to bind it effectively. But the upper god can easily get away. The equally powerful mid-level gods can also use various means to escape the blockade of the chains, and those lower-level gods are not so easy to escape. Dark chains seal the sky. Against the background of the fiery magma flowing on the earth, and under the light of thunderclouds and storms flashing in the sky, the chains of laws surrounded and bound the gods in groups, getting tighter and tighter. The triangular spike at the end of the chain of law, with the power of shattering the divine body, he stabbed towards the head of that god. Your Excellency, the god of justice, help. Your Excellency, the golden dragon god, save me. Your Excellency, save my life. This scene in front of me once again confirmed that the gods are not the gods people imagined. They are not great, they are not divine, they are not omnipotent. They are just a kind of existence that has evolved to a higher level. They are also afraid when they are in a desperate situation. When they are in distress, they also turn to help. And when they're on the verge of death, they despair too. Nearly 100 lower gods. In addition to the gods under the command of the three gods, the goddess of light, the goddess of dragon magic, and the goddess of elements, more than 30 true gods were rescued by the three upper gods and several middle gods. Still in the blockade of dark chains, their divine bodies have been heavily entwined by chains. Their souls have also been infected with death and destruction. When the ends of the chains, the triangular thorns lingering with the breath of ultimate death and destruction, quietly raised and stabbed like a snake's head, Godfall. The world roars. Shake 1,000. Just like when a demigod ascends to the throne, he will receive congratulations from each plane in one world. When a god falls, there will also be a celestial phenomenon representing the fall of the god. God fell, and more than one. The law chain pierced through the heads of the gods. Fortunately, the godhead was not broken. The first time that their heads were penetrated, the spirits of these gods were hidden in the godhead, driving the godhead to transform into a streamer to escape from the real world, to the game world, and back to their own kingdom of gods. If the divine power is enough to reunite a divine body, they can recover in a short period of time. If the divine power is not enough to condense the divine body, they can only sleep in their own kingdom of God, slowly collecting the power of faith and divine power, waiting to return one day. With bad luck, the Godhead was directly smashed. Godhead is broken. Divine soul penetrated. Even if their gods still exist, they are nothing but gods. Godfall. God's day. With the final will of the real world, with the resentment of revenge in the real world, at the cost of the consumption of the world's origin. A super large-scale ultimate explosion. More than 30 gods have perished here. Buried for the real world. 30 gods. Even if their godheads have been smashed, there are more than 30 god corpses that contain hundreds of years of divinity. Mind a move. The dark chains, like swimming black pythons, brought the corpses to Su Mu's side, and they were taken into the abyss world by him. At this time, each standing in the sky, the 1,000-foot-high white-boned devil exudes a terrifying aura. Countless dark chains shuttle back and forth around him, plus the looming scythe of death. Su Mu's current image is like a demon king who destroys the world. Only, who can imagine that this world destruction demon king is carrying the last will of a world before the destruction of the world? Opposite him, the gods who seem to be sacred are the real murderers who destroy the world. A burst. More than 30 gods fell. Even for the entire Bright Camp, this kind of loss only happened in the primordial age, when mankind united the second sun genocide to slaughter the eldest sun race, and at the end of the primordial age, when the light camp slaughtered the dark camp. Since then, has there ever been a situation where dozens of gods fell at one time? Opposite. The god of justice had a solemn expression on his face. After that outbreak, he knew that the opponent of himself and others was no longer just an upper god of the dark camp, but also the entire world. The chain of laws condensed from countless laws and rules clearly shows this. At this time, they are equivalent to facing a dimension demon in the world of a dimension demon. The divine power of the god of justice is not abundant. The same goes for other gods. Waking up from a long slumber, they were far from reaching the peak of their combat power. In this state, it is quite unwise to be an enemy in a dimensional world comparable to a dimensional demon god of a higher god. But the god of justice did not want to retreat like this. Because of shame. Even in the entire game world, in the entire light camp, the light gods under the goddess of light are the most powerful and domineering. If it was just a conflict, after completing the will of the three god kings, he wouldn't mind retreating. But just now, when the chain of countless laws sealed the heavens and the earth, he was there to help, and there were still several lower gods who belonged to the light gods fell. For the god of justice, this is a complete slap in the face. So, he's going to try. Do your best. Can you completely destroy all traces of this world? Combine other gods. Can you completely obliterate this dark god in this broken world? Boom! The surging breath exploded. The divine power flowing from the godhead runs through the whole body, and a vast domain of gods is also unfolding in the real world. The divine sword representing the priesthood of justice appeared in his hand. The god of justice slashed out with a sword, and a blazing divine light burst out, piercing the space of thousands of miles and attacking Su-mu. Not just the god of justice. When he shot, the fire god and the golden dragon also shot at the same time. Endless magma surged into the sky, and the blazing flames condensed, turning into flaming spears that were every 100 meters in front of them, and attacked Su-mu. The phantoms of giant dragons stretched across the sky, and one seemed to occupy most of the sky. Ordinary golden dragon claws also protruded from the void and attacked Su-mu. The three upper gods set an example, and the other gods were not idle either. In addition to the fact that the lower gods are no longer enough to intervene in such high-level battles, the first time the chain of laws that seals the heavens and the Jedi spreads out, they get out of the real world and return to the void of the game world. Those middle gods also took out their strongest magic or attack, and attacked Su-mu together with the three upper gods. This time, Su-mu didn't resist anymore. Just like the first time, blocking the collective bombardment of the gods with endless rock walls would consume too much the source of the world. The real world, which is so big that it is on the verge of destruction, can't support it a few times. Even the heavenly sealed Jedi of the Chain of Laws is difficult to release several times. But Su-mu has no fear. Letting the dark chains shuttle back and forth beside him, Su-mu once again grabbed the scythe of death. At this time, Reaper's scythe is more powerful. When Su-mu controlled the countless laws and the chain of laws transformed by the rules to seal the heavens and the earth, and blocked, bound, and pierced the gods one by one. The extreme breath of death and destruction born of the destruction of the entire real world also gather in the madness towards the scythe of death. Until the gods strike again, the scythe of death has completely become the embodiment of death and destruction. Grab the Reaper's scythe. Endless power melted into Su-mu's body from the Reaper's scythe. He seems to have grasped the whole world, as if he has grasped all the remaining power of the whole world in his hands. Then, cut out with all your might. That is a light. A crystal clear, like a crystal-like light. When this ray of light emerges from the Reaper's scythe, the magic tricks, the dragon claws from the golden dragon, the flame spear from the fire god, the justice sword from the justice god, they were all slashed by this light. The magic disappeared. Dragon claws are broken. Spear annihilation. Even the divine sword of the god of justice was shattered in this blow. 0. Ask for flowers, death, and destruction. When he has the control of the entire real world, when the real world is on the verge of destruction, and when the remaining power of the entire world is cut out by him, this blow has almost reached the level of the law of death and the law of destruction. Nothing to urge. This blow, only the existence that is also close to the level of the law can resist. The many gods were terrified. This blow beyond the limit has almost exceeded their imagination. In their impressions, it seems that only 3 supreme god kings can release such an attack and resist such an attack. Beyond the clergy, approaching the law, this was originally the definition of a god king. Retreat. The god of justice is not reconciled. But he dared not move forward. This blow that is close to the king of gods is far from what he can withstand only by the upper gods. It was at this time that a clear and majestic voice sounded in his soul. When this voice sounded, the god of justice did not care about other gods at all, and his body burst back and entered the game world. Not just the god of justice. When the voice of the goddess of light sounded in his soul, the voices of the goddess of magic and elements, and the dragon god also sounded in the soul of the god of fire and the golden dragon. The 3 kings of the gods are paying attention to this battle. Perhaps, initially, they are not concerned with the real world. As long as the real world is destroyed, they don't care how the creatures in the real world are disposed of, and how the wreckage of the real world is disposed of. Even, They don't care if a dark god who has reached the upper god level appears. When the time is right, just wipe it off. But when there was a battle in the real world, the fall of more than 30 lower-level gods alarmed them, making them wake up from the process of harvesting their beliefs, transforming their divine power, and restoring their own strength, and pay attention to this battle again. Then, only the previous scene. The three high-ranking gods suddenly retreated, heading towards the game world. Those median gods are even more so. That light is still spreading. Accompanied by the morning sound of a world, it seems that the song of death is centered on Su-mu, and it spreads towards the gods and the game world. And at this time, Su-mu, who is holding the scythe of the god of death, also burst into shape, towards the gods who are swiftly fleeing.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.